I'm Dr. Tom Miller, and a lot of people ask me, "Hey Tom, why do charter schools close?" Well, the very obvious answer why charter schools close is because of finances. They no longer have the cash to continue to run the organization. I mean, it's no different from small businesses or entities where cash is king. And from a charter school's perspective, cash is critical to the success, right? It's the oxygen to your school's long-term success. But what really hasn't been investigated of, well, what are some of the symptoms of this poor finances? Well, obviously there's inadequate enrollment, and this is 41% of charter schools that have closed is based upon having inadequate enrollment, and this would be that that the school is not a great product, and less individuals come, or the founder is not able to demonstrate that to build the trust in the community to come, and they make some heavy promises at the beginning with their facility, and they're under enrolled, and boom, within a couple months they're out of cash, right? Or there's just overall fiscal mismanagement, which about a quarter of schools close because of fiscal mismanagement. This might be having the wrong person in a finance position. It could be that you've got some fraud or other risk issues. But the one thing the one thing that's true to all of this, the number one reasons why charter schools close is because the actions of the governing board. You see, actions or non-actions are still actions, right? So asking the question, or getting involved, or having an understanding of how we're funded and the cash flow, these are all choices. And being great is a choice. And the first warning sign of a charter school that's going to close is their failure to produce on-time reports or auditing, required oversight, anything that shows that it's late or inaccurate. Board members, you should start perking your ears up, right? And this is even true from a principal's perspective, right? If you're leading your finance team, if you find that reports are inaccurate or late, this is the first warning sign that whoever is in that position is not capable. So one of the situations we had to handle as a charter school team was an organization that had this massive enrollment. It had a lot of students. It was in a very, very expensive building. And it seemed, right, from the outside views and looking at the budget, that everything was okay. But through walking through the hallways, you could just tell that something was missing, right? Teachers were, complaining about not having resources, or some of the technology wasn't in. There was just these signs. But every month you went to the board meeting, you saw the budget, and the budget showed that the school was on track. It wasn't until I came across this folder labeled Unpaid Invoices that I started to get a little bit more curious, and I happened to open up the invoice and just found over $500,000 over invoices over the last year that were not paid. So it was clear to me that the only way that this school was demonstrating a strong budget was that they just weren't paying any of their current bills. It didn't take long before we were able to identify what was the real cause of this problem, and it was previous years of financial hardship, year after year, and borrowing money, to the point where the school was actually borrowing money from a short-term lender and paying almost 27% interest over 3 months to be able to make payroll. Now, I believe, right, kids do what they want, and adults work by a plan. So the one thing that we were able to do was to build a cash flow plan for this organization over the next 6 months, and we were actually able to take this school from a $500,000 deficit to a $100,000 surplus by the end of the year. We were able to pay back all those unpaid invoices and work with vendors, right? So by the end of the year, not only was the school no longer in previous debt, but it actually had a surplus for its first ever time in existence. Now, this wasn't through any sort of miracle, right? It was just the fact that, hey, we created a vision. We committed to the plan of no longer borrowing money and making sure that every dollar went directly to student achievement and to teachers. And we worked with vendors, and that's a big part of this process. But we were able to take that school $500,000 deficit to $100,000 surplus. So what I want to do is I want to show you here. I want you to download this document that I'm providing you, and these are 5 tips. These are 5 things that I learned through that process, and it starts with this: that you have to start budgeting in the first quarter of the school year, not the last quarter. I mean, most organizations don't even start to do their budgeting process until the spring of the second half of the school year. And I believe that if you truly want to have an effective budget and have a true understanding of that every dollar has a purpose and every dollar is going to the betterment of your organization, you have to start to budget in that first quarter. So there's some strategies here for every single quarter that what you and your finance team, and part of this is diving in and having conversations with the exceptional children's team, and talking to every division of your school. How well are we using these resources? What's not being used that we no longer had to pay for? I mean, you truly need individuals constantly looking at your budget on a monthly basis, maybe even a weekly basis, depending where you're at. Tip number 2 is budgeting conservatively on your per pupil revenue. Now, one of the issues that I see is that schools will try to predict how much money they'll get per every student next year. That's not a very strong way to budget for the future. So we I always say to have multiple budgeting percentages, 85, 90, and 95% of your budget. Have 3 different budgets, and that way when you make your 100% enrollment, you've got all this extra surplus. So there's some strategies in here in there. So download this document, sit down with your as the treasurer or the CFO and the head of school, and really go through these 5 tips, especially tip 4, questions to ask the senior leadership team. I've put about 15 questions in this document here for you to really go through. So hope this resource adds some value to you. Remember that if you're not preparing on the front end, you will be repairing on the back end. And cash is the oxygen for the success of your public charter school. So again, I'm Tom Miller from Leaders Building Leaders, and I'm excited to bring you this governance strengthening exercise for the month. Thanks, everybody.